June 17, 1943. Camp Aliceville, Alabama. Unteroffizier Ernst Schneider stood motionless before the camp canteen display case, his mind struggling to process what his eyes reported. Rows of brown glass bottles filled with carbonated liquid, each labeled Coca-Cola, sat in an ice-filled cooler alongside candy bars, chewing gum and fresh fruit. The handwritten price card read 5 cents. His monthly prisoner wage of $24 could purchase 480 of these bottles. In 2 years fighting across North Africa under Rommel command, subsisting on hardtack biscuits and ersatz coffee that tasted like burned grain, Schneider had never encountered anything like this sweet, fizzing beverage that American guards drank casually throughout the day. The mathematics made no sense according to everything Nazi propaganda had taught about American weakness and economic collapse. This soft drink, which guards informed him was consumed by American children with their allowances, cost less than a single Reichsmark when converted to German currency. The production, bottling, distribution, and refrigeration required to deliver this unnecessary luxury item to a prisoner of war camp in rural Alabama represented industrial capacity that contradicted every lesson about American inefficiency and Jewish-controlled economic chaos that Wehrmacht political officers had drilled into soldiers. What Schneider witnessed that June afternoon represented the opening move in a psychological warfare campaign more effective than any propaganda program could achieve. Across 300 prisoner of war camps scattered throughout the United States, 371,683 German POWs would confront material abundance that systematically demolished every assumption underlying Nazi ideology. They would discover ice cream served routinely as dessert, candy bars so common that guards gave them away, sugar available in unlimited quantities, and food so abundant that waste became routine rather than criminal. These simple luxuries, treats that most German children had never tasted in their lives, would prove more powerful than any Allied propaganda in transforming enemy soldiers' understanding of American industrial might. The story of how Coca-Cola, ice cream, and casual abundance broke Nazi ideology began not in prison camps, but on North African battlefields where the Afrika Korps surrendered in May 1943. Approximately 250,000 German and Italian soldiers, veterans of desert campaigns who had pushed British forces back to Egypt under Rommel's leadership, expected harsh treatment matching what Nazi propaganda had promised. Instead, within hours of surrender, they encountered American care rations that seemed like feasts compared to German field rations. These emergency meals, which American soldiers routinely complained about as inadequate, contained treasures that German troops hadn't seen in months. Crackers made with real wheat flour, processed cheese that didn't require refrigeration, fruit bars sweetened with sugar, instant coffee that actually tasted like coffee, sugar tablets for sweetening, and cigarettes made from genuine tobacco rather than questionable substitutes. The psychological impact began immediately. German officers documented their soldiers' confusion in letters that Allied censors preserved. Hauptmann Friedrich Weber wrote to the International Red Cross, "We prepared our men for starvation and brutality as prisoners. Instead, the Americans feed us better than our own quartermaster Corps managed during our advance to El Alamein. This generosity toward defeated enemies contradicts everything we were told about American character. Either our leadership lied systematically, or we fundamentally misunderstood the nature of American power." The processing camps established in North Africa represented the prisoners' first systematic exposure to American logistical capability. Military records document that the United States Army served pancakes with maple syrup, fresh eggs prepared multiple ways, milk both fresh and powdered, coffee with real sugar and cream, and white bread made from refined flour. For men who had survived on 2,800 calories daily when supplies permitted, often dropping to 1,500 calories during supply shortages, the American prisoner rations exceeding 3,500 calories daily seemed impossible. The food wasn't just abundant. It included items that had disappeared from German military rations years earlier as economic pressures forced substitutions and reductions. More disturbing to German understanding was the casualness with which Americans treated this abundance. Kitchen staff threw away food that German soldiers would have considered valuable. Bread that had hardened slightly went into garbage bins rather than being saved for future use. Coffee grounds were used once and discarded, rather than being dried and reused as German logistics required. Sugar sat in open bowls rather than being carefully rationed. This waste, which violated every principle of German wartime management, demonstrated wealth so enormous that conservation became unnecessary. The Atlantic crossing aboard Liberty ships provided intensive education in American industrial achievement. These vessels, mass-produced at unprecedented rates, with one ship completed every 42 hours at peak production, transported up to 30,000 prisoners monthly across the Atlantic to camps in the continental United States. Naval records document that prisoner rations aboard transport ships matched or exceeded provisions given to crew members, approximately 3,500 calories daily, including fresh bread baked in ship's ovens, meat served at least once daily, vegetables both fresh and canned, and coffee with unlimited sugar and milk. The refrigeration systems, standard equipment on American transport vessels, maintained fresh food throughout voyages lasting 2 weeks. German merchant ships and even many warships lacked comparable refrigeration, forcing crews to rely on preserved foods and accepting that fresh provisions would spoil within days of departure. American ships casually maintained temperature-controlled storage that kept eggs fresh, butter solid, milk cold, and meat safe for consumption across thousands of miles of ocean travel. Most remarkably, documented accounts from multiple ships confirmed that ice cream was served to prisoners during Atlantic crossings. The USS General M.B. Stewart's log from July 1943 specifically records serving ice cream to German POWs on July 4th using the ship's ice cream maker capable of producing 10 gallons per batch. For men who hadn't encountered ice cream since before the war began, this frozen dessert served in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean defied rational explanation. The energy required to freeze cream and sugar, the machinery needed to churn the mixture, the refrigeration to keep it frozen, and the casual willingness to provide this luxury to enemy prisoners revealed industrial capacity operating on scales German economics couldn't explain. When ships docked at American ports, including Norfolk, Newport News, and Boston, German prisoners encountered infrastructure that made Nazi propaganda about American industrial collapse seem absurdly wrong. The Norfolk Naval Base alone, covering 4,300 acres with extensive waterfront facilities, handled more cargo daily than major German ports like Hamburg or Bremen managed weekly even before Allied bombing reduced their capacity. The port exchanges, shops serving dock workers, displayed shelves stocked with candy bars from multiple manufacturers including Hershey, Mars, and Nestle, each brand offering numerous varieties. Military procurement records document these exchanges stocked dozens of candy types, all selling at standardized prices of 5 cents for standard bars, 10 cents for larger sizes. The variety itself astonished German observers who had grown accustomed to shortages that made any candy a rare luxury. American workers casually chose between different brands and flavors, exercising consumer preference in a market that seemed untouched by 4 years of global warfare. The railway journey inland provided further evidence contradicting Nazi teachings about American weakness. Unlike the cattle cars used for prisoner and deportee transport throughout German-occupied Europe, prisoners traveled in passenger coaches with actual seats, windows, and functioning bathrooms. Dining cars serve full meals during transit. Documented menus from July 1943 include fried chicken with multiple side dishes, vegetables both fresh and cooked, desserts including pie with multiple filling options, and coffee with unlimited refills. Prisoners discovered this wasn't special treatment designed to impress them, but standard American passenger rail service available to ordinary citizens. The waiters serving meals, predominantly African-American men, treated prisoners with professional courtesy that seemed incompatible with propaganda about American racial chaos and social collapse. These service workers earned wages that allowed them to purchase the same foods they served, a detail that contradicted Nazi teachings about American economic inequality. The camp system constructed across the United States housed prisoners in conditions exceeding Geneva Convention requirements, so substantially that German officers initially suspected deception. Camp Aliceville, Alabama, typical of larger facilities, provided barracks with electric lighting, hot running water, flush toilets, and steam heating for winter months. Each barrack housed 60 men in conditions more comfortable than many German military bases. Medical facilities provided care superior to what many prisoners had received in the Afrika Korps. Recreational areas included sports fields, libraries, and craft workshops. But the camp exchanges delivered the deepest psychological impact. United States Army quartermaster records document that these post-exchange stores stocked an array of items that transformed prisoner understanding of American abundance. Multiple soft drink brands, including Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, Dr. Pepper, and RC Cola, sat in refrigerated cases. Candy bars and confections from numerous manufacturers lined shelves. Ice cream, where refrigeration capacity permitted, was available for purchase. Cigarettes and tobacco products from multiple brands offered choices. Fresh fruit, including apples, oranges, and bananas, appeared regularly. Beer with 3.2% alcohol content could be purchased in limited quantities. The pricing structure revealed economic realities that shattered German assumptions. Prisoners earned 80 cents daily for labor, later raised to $1 as the war continued. At 5 cents per bottle for Coca-Cola and similar prices for candy bars, a single day's wages could purchase 16 to 20 items. In Germany, where such products existed at all if one had proper connections, comparable purchases would require a week's wages or more. The casual abundance available to prisoners exceeded what German civilians experienced, creating cognitive dissonance that propaganda couldn't explain away. Coca-Cola itself became the most powerful symbol of American industrial democracy. The Coca-Cola Company's production during wartime reached levels that seemed impossible to Germans familiar with severe shortages of everything. Company archives document that production exceeded 5 billion bottles in 1943 alone, with every bottle identical in taste, appearance, and quality regardless of where it was manufactured. This standardization, achieved across hundreds of bottling plants nationwide, demonstrated quality control, exceeding anything German industry accomplished even in critical military production. The military contract guaranteeing 5-cent Coca-Cola to American servicemen worldwide required logistical coordination that amazed technically minded prisoners. The concentrated syrup, manufactured in Atlanta and distributed to bottling plants nationwide and eventually worldwide, maintained consistent flavor through supply chains spanning thousands of miles. German prisoners observed that Coca-Cola tasted identical whether consumed in Alabama or Texas, in June or December, from bottles or fountain dispensers. This consistency in a non-essential consumer product exceeded the quality controlled German industry achieved in critical military equipment. The ubiquity of Coca-Cola throughout American society impressed prisoners more than the drink itself. Every camp received regular deliveries without apparent supply difficulties. Work details sent outside camps observed vending machines and coolers everywhere. Gas stations, factories, schools, stores, offices. Americans of all ages and social classes drank it casually, often discarding half-empty bottles without concern for waste. Children drank it with their allowances. Workers drank it on breaks. Families kept it in home refrigerators. The casual consumption of a product requiring industrial processing, bottling, distribution, and refrigeration revealed economic strength operating on scales Nazi economics said was impossible. Historical records from Coca-Cola Company archives confirm that many prison camps received weekly deliveries of 200 to 300 cases, each containing 24 bottles. Camp Hearne in Texas alone consumed approximately 7,000 bottles weekly during summer months of 1943. This single camp consumption of one non-essential beverage exceeded the total soft drink production of entire German regions. The mathematics of American abundance simply didn't compute according to German economic understanding. Ice cream in American prison camps seemed like deliberate fiction designed to test prisoners' credulity. Yet Army records extensively documented that ice cream was regularly served in camps with adequate refrigeration capacity during summer months. The American military considered ice cream essential for morale, so important that the Navy built specialized ice cream ships to supply Pacific Fleet forces. At Camp Shelby, Mississippi, the July 4th, 1943 celebration included ice cream made on site using hand-crank freezers that required ice, salt, cream, sugar, and flavorings. Prisoners watched as these machines produced gallon after gallon of frozen dessert using resources Germans would never waste on entertainment food. By 1944, many camps had installed electric ice cream makers capable of producing larger batches with less labor. The variety available rivaled or exceeded what German ice cream parlors offered before the war. Chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, butter pecan, and rotating special flavors. Prisoners could purchase ice cream bars for 10 cents, ice cream sandwiches for the same price, or cups with various toppings. Army procurement records indicate that larger camps ordered 50 to 100 gallons of ice cream weekly during summer months, consumption levels that would have supplied entire German towns before wartime rationing. The frequency and casualness of ice cream service challenged German, understanding more than the existence of ice cream itself. This wasn't a rare treat saved for special occasions, but routine desserts served multiple times weekly. Kitchen staff made ice cream as casually as they prepared other meals, using recipes that called for quantities of cream and sugar that would have been hoarded in Germany. The willingness to dedicate refrigeration capacity, electrical power, labor, and scarce ingredients to creating frozen desserts for enemy prisoners demonstrated priorities Germans simply couldn't fathom. Sugar consumption in American prison camps delivered particularly powerful psychological impact because it represented such a stark contrast with German deprivation. In Germany, sugar was strictly rationed, with civilians receiving 280 grams monthly when supplies permitted, often less during shortage periods. In American camps, sugar sat in bowls on mess hall tables for unlimited use. Quartermaster records document camps receiving 100-pound bags of refined white sugar weekly, quantities that would have supplied hundreds of German families for a month. Camp bakeries used sugar with abandon that seemed criminally wasteful to German sensibilities. Cakes appeared regularly on menus. Cookies were baked in large batches. Pies featured sweetened fillings, and desserts included generous amount of sugar. The mess halls sweetened coffee, tea, cereals, and numerous dishes without considering conservation. Fresh fruit was served with sugar for sprinkling. Even vegetables sometimes received sweet glazes. This profligate sugar use contradicted everything prisoners knew about wartime sacrifice and resource management. One documented incident from Camp Aliceville, Alabama, illustrated the gulf between American abundance and German scarcity perfectly. In August 1943, humid weather caused several hundred pounds of sugar to harden into blocks, making it difficult to use in kitchen operations. Rather than investing the time and effort to break up the hardened sugar, steam it back to granular form, or otherwise recover this valuable commodity, kitchen staff simply discarded it and ordered replacement supplies. German prisoners working in the kitchen were reportedly so distressed by this waste that they complained to camp administrators, unable to comprehend throwing away sugar that German civilians would have treasured. American chocolate consumption patterns revealed democratic abundance that challenged Nazi hierarchical worldview. Major chocolate manufacturers, including Hershey, Mars, and Nestle, produced millions of chocolate bars monthly despite wartime restrictions on civilian production. The military alone purchased 380 million pounds of chocolate products during the war years, but substantial civilian production continued simultaneously. Camp exchanges stocked multiple chocolate varieties, including standard Hershey bars, Mars bars, Milky Way, Snickers, Baby Ruth, and military duration emergency chocolate bars designed for extreme conditions. Prices range from 5 cents for standard bars to 10 cents for larger sizes, making chocolate affordable on prisoner wages. More significantly, prisoners discovered that Americans had preferences among chocolate brands, casually choosing one over another based on personal taste rather than being grateful for any chocolate at all. This consumer choice in non-essential luxuries during wartime seemed incomprehensible to Germans who had seen chocolate disappear from civilian markets years earlier. Red Cross packages distributed monthly to prisoners included chocolate bars among other items, representing an additional source beyond camp exchanges. American Red Cross records document that standard parcels contained chocolate or candy bars weighing approximately 2 ounces, instant coffee, processed cheese, crackers, canned meat providing additional protein, cigarettes, and soap. These packages supplemented regular prison rations rather than replacing them, providing luxury items that exceeded what German civilians received as basic rations. Thanksgiving 1943 introduced German prisoners to American holiday abundance and national coordination of consumption that dwarfed German organizational efforts. This purely American celebration, unknown in European tradition, demonstrated logistical capability applied to civilian comfort rather than military necessity. Army records confirm that all prison camps served traditional Thanksgiving dinners, including roast turkey with bread stuffing and gravy, mashed potatoes with butter, sweet potatoes with brown sugar glaze, cranberry sauce, multiple vegetable dishes, dinner rolls with butter, pumpkin pie with whipped cream, and coffee and milk. The logistics required to provide turkey dinners to 425,000 prisoners of war plus millions of American servicemen worldwide showcased organizational capacity that exceeded German military logistics. The coordination of turkey production, slaughter, refrigeration, transportation, and preparation across hundreds of locations simultaneously required supply chain management that German quartermaster officers recognized as superior to their own systems. The fact that enemy prisoners received the same meal as American soldiers emphasized the quality of treatment that contradicted Nazi racial hierarchy and demonstrated strength through mercy rather than vengeance. Christmas 1943 brought unexpected generosity from American civilians that challenged Nazi teachings about American selfishness and materialism. Church groups, civic organizations, and individual citizens sent packages to German prisoners despite having family members fighting against Germany. The American Friends Service Committee alone distributed 50,000 Christmas packages to enemy prisoners, each containing homemade cookies, candy, toiletries, games and books, cigarettes, and writing materials. The scale of the civilian charity toward enemies demonstrated social cohesion that Nazi propaganda said democratic societies couldn't achieve. Local communities near camps provided additional support that personalized American generosity. In Tonkawa, Oklahoma, townspeople deliver homemade Christmas treats to German prisoners at Camp Tonkawa. In Hearne, Texas, church groups brought Christmas cookies and candy to Camp Hearne. In Aliceville, Alabama, local residents donated items for prisoner Christmas celebrations. This civilian kindness toward enemies challenged Nazi ideology at its foundation. Americans who had family members fighting against Germany nevertheless showed charity to German prisoners, demonstrating strength through mercy rather than seeking vengeance. The motivation behind this generosity confused German prisoners educated in Nazi principles. They had been taught that Americans were weak, divided by class and racial conflict, and lacking in national solidarity. Yet they experienced voluntary charity from civilians who had every reason to hate them. The only explanation that made sense was that American abundance was so enormous that sharing with enemies cost nothing, revealing economic strength beyond German comprehension. As labor shortages intensified throughout 1944, German prisoners worked increasingly outside camps, witnessing American food production firsthand. By late 1944, approximately 100,000 prisoners worked in agriculture and food processing, gaining intimate knowledge of American agricultural abundance. In Michigan orchards, prisoners picked cherries destined for maraschino production, those bright red garnishes topping ice cream sundaes and decorating desserts. The volume staggered them. Single orchards produced tons of fruit dedicated entirely to decorative purposes rather than basic nutrition. At canneries, prisoners observed quality control standards that rejected perfectly edible food for minor imperfections. Del Monte records from 1944 indicate that approximately 15% of fruit was rejected for canning due to size irregularities or minor blemishes, typically diverted to animal feed rather than human consumption. German prisoners who had eaten food that American quality control would reject as spoiled-watched as nutritious fruit was deemed unfit because it didn't meet aesthetic standards. This prioritization of appearance over pure nutrition revealed abundance, so complete that waste became acceptable. Sugar beet processing in Colorado and Nebraska revealed agricultural mechanization beyond German achievement. Single farms produced more sugar beets than entire German agricultural regions, using machinery that minimized human labor while maximizing output. Prisoners learned that American sugar production from both cane and beets reached approximately 7 million tons annually even during wartime, explaining the casual abundance they witnessed in camps. Germany's total sugar production, even before wartime disruptions, never approached half this figure. German prisoners working near schools witnessed early versions of organized school lunch programs that would be formalized in the National School Lunch Act of 1946. Children received hot lunches, including milk, protein, vegetables, and often desserts. The milk program particularly impressed German observers. Many schools provided fresh milk to children daily, logistics that required refrigerated trucks delivering to thousands of schools on precise schedules. This organizational capacity dedicated to children's nutrition during wartime, when Germany forced children into labor and reduced their rations, demonstrated priorities that contradicted Nazi claims about democratic weakness. Some school cafeterias even offered ice cream for additional purchase beyond the standard lunch. The concept of children buying frozen desserts at school, while German children faced food shortages, created profound impact among prisoner observers. Letters home describe these observations, creating cognitive dissonance for families in Germany who were experiencing increasing deprivation while receiving reports of abundance from imprisoned relatives. When minimum security prisoners ate at American diners under guard supervision, they encountered democratic abundance in its most accessible form. These small restaurants, ubiquitous across America, offered menus that would have graced elite German establishments, yet were available to anyone with modest funds. Documented prices from 1944 show hamburgers costing 25 cents, Coca-Cola 5 cents, pie 15 cents per slice, ice cream sundaes 25 cents, and full dinner specials ranging from 65 to 75 cents, including multiple courses. The quality of service impressed prisoners more than the food itself. A factory worker and a bank president could sit at adjacent counter stools, order identical meals, pay identical prices, and receive identical service from the same waitress. This democratic access to quality food contradicted German social stratification, where restaurants reflected and reinforced class distinctions. American diners served everyone equally, making abundance accessible rather than restricted to elites. As prisoners gained access to American publications, they discovered production statistics that documented the scope of American industrial might. In numerical terms, Nazi propaganda could no longer dispute. Published figures for 1944 American production included approximately 7 million tons of sugar, 380 million pounds of chocolate and cocoa products for military contract alone, not counting civilian production. 5 billion bottles of Coca-Cola, using 1943 figures, with growth continuing, over 500 million gallons of ice cream, and 119 billion pounds of milk. These numbers, published openly in American media and trade publications, documented that America's wartime production exceeded Germany's peacetime peaks. German production figures for the same period, compiled after the war from captured documents, told a story of collapse and scarcity. Sugar was heavily rationed, with production barely meeting minimal civilian and military needs. Chocolate production was limited to military priority, with virtually none available to civilians. Soft drink production was minimal, with most existing plants converted to military production. Ice cream production had essentially ceased except for rare ceremonial occasions. And milk was severely rationed, with many civilians receiving none. The statistical comparison revealed not just quantitative differences, but qualitative distinctions. America fought a global two-theater war, while maintaining civilian consumption levels that exceeded German peacetime standards. Germany mobilized its entire economy for warfare, yet couldn't feed its own population adequately. The implications were inescapable. American industrial might operated on scales German planners had never imagined possible. By late 1944, an extraordinary reversal occurred that symbolized a complete inversion of expected wartime conditions. German prisoners in America began sending food packages to Germany rather than receiving them. Using wages earned in camp labor, prisoners purchased American products to mail home. Chocolate bars that German children had forgotten, instant coffee that German adults hadn't tasted in years, canned goods that provided protein unavailable through German rations, sugar that German families could use to make special occasion treats, and other items that demonstrated American abundance to people experiencing increasing deprivation. International Red Cross records confirm this reversal, documenting that German prisoners in America sent approximately 11 million parcels to Germany during their captivity, with most parcels containing food items. The psychological impact on German families, receiving American abundance from imprisoned relatives while they faced starvation and freedom, profoundly undermined Nazi ideology. The government that promised victory and prosperity delivered defeat and hunger, while the enemy that supposedly represented weakness and chaos provided comfort even to captured soldiers. American rationing, implemented during the war to manage resources and prevent inflation, revealed the gulf between societies more clearly than abundance alone could demonstrate. Americans complained about sugar rationing of 2 pounds monthly per person, more than triple the German allowance when German sugar was available at all. American meat rationing at 28 ounces weekly per person exceeded what Germans received monthly. Coffee rationing frustrated Americans who had grown accustomed to unlimited consumption, while Germans had long since switched to substitutes that barely resembled actual coffee. Even under rationing, Americans maintained consumption levels Germans considered impossible luxury. Office of Price Administration records document that Americans purchased 74 pounds of sugar per capita in 1944 despite rationing, approximately 10 times German consumption. Americans consumed meat at rates that would have represented feast days in Germany as routine daily meals. The American population complained about restrictions that still left them better fed than German civilians had been before the war began. Beyond Coca-Cola, prisoners discovered America's broader soft drink industry that demonstrated market competition and consumer choice during wartime. Pepsi Cola, Dr. Pepper, RC Cola, Orange Crush, and numerous regional brands competed nationwide, each maintaining distribution networks that reached even small towns. The variety itself, multiple companies producing similar products in genuine competition rather than state-directed monopoly, demonstrated market abundance impossible under German-controlled economy. Bottling plants operated in every major American city and many smaller towns. The technology involved carbonation systems, bottling lines, capping machines, labeling equipment was standardized and efficient, allowing individual plants to produce millions of bottles annually. The distribution network reached every corner of American society. Gas stations selling cold drinks to travelers, grocery stores stocking multiple brands, restaurants offering fountain service, vending machines in factories and offices, and home delivery in some markets. American soft drink production reached billions of bottles annually by war's end, representing dozens of bottles per capita yearly. This single industry's output exceeded entire sectors of German consumer production that had been sacrificed to military needs. The existence of robust civilian industries producing non-essential goods while simultaneously supporting massive military production demonstrated economic depth Germany couldn't match. Spring 1945 brought the final psychological blow to Nazi ideology. As American forces advanced through Germany, German prisoners in America watched newsreel footage of GIs distributing chocolate and gum to German children. These children's joy at receiving American candy their own government couldn't provide completed the ideological demolition. The contrast couldn't have been starker. American soldiers advancing through enemy territory carried enough candy to give away to children, while the German state that promised triumph and prosperity delivered starvation and defeat. Films of concentration camp liberations shown to prisoners demonstrated American humanity toward victims of the regime German soldiers had served. American troops shared rations with skeletal survivors, provided medical care, and treated victims with compassion. These images challenged prisoners to confront what their nation had become, but also demonstrated that American abundance extended even to those who had suffered under German occupation. Between 1945 and 1946, German prisoners returned to a destroyed homeland. Many prisoners had gained significant weight in American captivity, averaging 15 to 20 pounds heavier than when captured. They returned to families who had lost weight to starvation in German freedom. Medical examinations conducted during repatriation documented that prisoners generally returned healthier than when captured, with improved dental health, healed injuries, and recovery from malnutrition. Meanwhile, their families had weakened from deprivation. The physical evidence of American plenty versus German deprivation was literally embodied in returning prisoners. They brought final Red Cross packages home, containing chocolate, coffee, and canned goods that became family treasures. Children who had forgotten chocolate's taste received Hershey bars from fathers who had eaten ice cream regularly in prison camps. Wives who survived on 1,200 calories daily heard about prison camp meals, exceeding 3,500 calories. The contrast between captivity and freedom, between enemy treatment and homeland conditions, could not be explained by Nazi ideology. Former prisoners became unexpected advocates for the Marshall Plan and American aid to rebuild Europe. They had witnessed American abundance that wasn't zero-sum, prosperity through production rather than conquest. Their testimony that Americans could afford to rebuild enemies influenced German acceptance of American assistance. These men understood that American power came from productive capacity rather than extraction, from creation rather than theft. They had seen a society wealthy enough to waste food while fighting a global war, revealing economic strength operating on principles Nazi economics denied. The German economic miracle of the 1950s was partially built on knowledge gained in American prison camps. Former prisoners who had witnessed American production methods, distribution systems, and consumer abundance applied these lessons to German Reconstruction. They had learned that mass production could make luxuries affordable for ordinary citizens. Standardization enabled both quality and efficiency simultaneously. Consumer abundance created political stability rather than weakness. Industrial democracy could outproduce authoritarian control. Market competition drove innovation rather than chaos. These lessons, learned through Coca-Cola and ice cream, shaped a generation of German business and political leaders. The transformation of German prisoners through American food abundance is extensively documented in multiple source categories. Military quartermaster records preserved in National Archives detail camp supplies, rations, and procurement. International Red Cross reports documented prisoner treatment and conditions. Corporate production records, particularly Coca-Cola Company archives, confirm manufacturing and distribution. Prisoner correspondence, censored but preserved, provides first-hand accounts. Post-war interviews and memoirs from both former prisoners and camp personnel add personal perspectives. Academic studies, particularly Arnold Krammer's extensive research on German prisoners in America, analyzed the broader implications. Arnold Krammer, recognized as a leading historian of German prisoners of war in America, concluded after decades of research that food abundance was central to ideological transformation. His studies confirmed that casual American plenty accomplished what formal re-education programs couldn't achieve: complete demolition of Nazi superiority myths. The evidence was too pervasive, too consistent, too undeniable to dismiss as propaganda. Prisoners ate better as enemies and German civilians ate as citizens, proving American claims about abundance while disproving Nazi claims about American weakness. The statistical summary tells an irrefutable story through numbers that can't be disputed. Average prison consumption from 1943 to 1946 included 3,300 to 3,600 daily calories, compared to German civilian rations of 1,200 to 1,500 when available. Prisoners received approximately 4 pounds of sugar monthly, while German civilians got 280 grams when supplies permitted. Meat rations for prisoners reached 32 ounces weekly, while Germans received 10.5 ounces weekly that was often unavailable. Prisoners had access to 1 quart of milk daily where available, while milk in Germany was severely rationed. Ice cream was served regularly during summer months to prisoners, while it was non-existent in Germany. Soft drinks were unlimited at 5 cents each for prisoners, while none were available in Germany. These disparities weren't propaganda inventions, but documented reality, confirmed by records from multiple sources. Enemy prisoners ate better than German civilians, proving American abundance extended even to defeated foes. The implications couldn't be avoided. Either Nazi ideology had fundamentally misunderstood American power, or Nazi leadership had deliberately lied about American weakness. Either conclusion undermined the ideological foundation of the Third Reich. The prisoner experience with American food culture influenced post-war Germany profoundly and permanently. Coca-Cola returned to West Germany in 1949, becoming a symbol of American alliance and Western prosperity. Ice cream parlors modeling American soda fountains appeared in German cities, often owned by former prisoners who had worked in camp kitchens. Candy bars and chewing gum became symbols of recovery and American friendship. Supermarkets, an American innovation, were introduced to Germany with strong support from former prisoners who understood that democratic abundance required new distribution methods. Former prisoners of war often became importers of American food products, understanding their appeal from personal experience. They knew these products represented more than taste. They symbolized abundance, democracy, and modernity. The introduction of American-style shopping and eating patterns to Germany was championed by men who had experienced these systems firsthand in prison camps and recognized their superiority to German wartime and even pre-war distribution systems. In various post-war interviews and memoirs collected over decades, German former prisoners consistently identified food abundance as transformative to their understanding of the war and their nation's ideology. A former Afrika Korps officer stated in a 1975 interview published in the German Veterans magazine, "We expected to defeat a weak, divided America. Instead, we found a nation that could give ice cream to enemies. That's when we knew we had lost more than a war. We had lost our entire worldview. Everything we had been taught about American weakness was revealed as lies." Another veteran interviewed for a documentary produced in 1985 recalled with clarity after 4 decades, "My first Coca-Cola was like drinking the future. It was sweet, fizzing, completely unnecessary for survival, and available to anyone for a nickel. That drink contained everything Nazi Germany wasn't. Abundant, democratic, joyful, and accessible to all. One bottle taught me more about American power than any propaganda could explain." These testimonies, collected across decades and consistent in their themes despite geographic and temporal separation, confirm that American food abundance achieved what military defeat alone couldn't accomplish: complete ideological transformation. The men who arrived in America as committed Nazi warriors left as witnesses to democratic prosperity. They had tasted democracy, and it was sweet. Historians recognize the German prisoner experience in America as a remarkably successful re-education through abundance rather than propaganda. The program succeeded because it relied on observation rather than instruction. Prisoners saw American society functioning at peak productivity while treating enemies with dignity. The food aspect was crucial because it was universal in appeal. Everyone understands hunger and satisfaction. Food is undeniable. One cannot argue with full stomach or dismiss the evidence of eyes and taste buds. Weight gain and health improvement were visible evidence that couldn't be denied. The continuous nature of abundance, 3 meals daily plus canteen purchases, prevented dismissal as temporary propaganda. The comparative nature was inescapable. Prisoners knew German deprivation intimately from personal experience. Every meal became a lesson in American industrial capacity. Every Coca-Cola demonstrated standardization and distribution mastery. Every ice cream sundae showed that abundance could be democratic rather than reserved for elites. Children of prisoners of war grew up hearing stories about American abundance in prison camps that initially seemed fantastic. These stories were validated as West Germany recovered and American products became available in German markets. The mythology of American plenty, born in prison camps, shaped generations of German-American relations. Many children of former prisoners later studied or worked in America, drawn by their father stories of impossible abundance, and found that reality matched the tales. Supermarkets stocked with variety, soda fountains serving sundaes, candy aisles offering dozens of choices, all proved their fathers had told the truth. This multi-generational impact extended beyond individuals to influence West German business culture broadly. The economic miracle wasn't just about production levels. It was about creating abundance for ordinary citizens rather than reserving quality for elites. The democratic access to consumer goods, learned from American examples, became central to West German Reconstruction philosophy. Today, McDonald's operates over 1,400 restaurants in Germany, serving hamburgers and Coca-Cola to millions. Coca-Cola is as ubiquitous in German supermarkets as it is in American stores. Ice cream is ordinary rather than special. The transformation from scarcity to abundance, initiated in American prison camps 80 years ago, is complete and irreversible. Yet the historical lesson remains powerful and relevant. The story demonstrates ideological transformation through abundance rather than deprivation. It proves the power of kindness rather than cruelty in changing hearts and minds. It shows demonstration is more effective than propaganda in challenging false beliefs. The German prisoners who couldn't believe ice cream and Coca-Cola in American prison camps witnessed democracy's ultimate weapon, the ability to create such abundance that it could be casually shared with enemies. The story of German prisoners and American food abundance represents history's most unusual victory through generosity rather than punishment. An ideology was defeated by ice cream, a worldview shattered by soft drinks, and enemy soldiers transformed not through force but through plenty. These men experienced transformation through abundance, arriving in America believing in German superiority and American weakness, leaving with understanding that American strength came from productive capacity so vast it could afford waste. The society that could give Coca-Cola to prisoners for 5 cents, that served ice cream to enemies on hot summer days, that provided candy bars in unlimited quantities, possessed power beyond military might. The ice cream sundae with its layers of excess, ice cream, syrup, whipped cream, nuts, cherry, became a metaphor for American abundance, where each component alone would have been luxury in Germany, but combined they represented impossible decadence made routine. That enemies could order seconds while German children faced hunger revealed the totality of Nazi failure. Former prisoners often recalled specific moments of revelation that remained vivid decades later. The first Coca-Cola's fizz on the tongue, the first spoonful of ice cream melting in the mouth, the first bite of a Hershey bar's smooth chocolate. These sensory memories carried more power than any argument or statistic. They had tasted democracy, and it was sweet beyond any propaganda's power to diminish. The transformation was complete and irrevocable for those who experienced it. Men who had marched for the Third Reich returned to Germany as apostles of abundance, carrying the revolutionary message that prosperity came from freedom rather than conquest, that strength came from productivity rather than aggression. They had learned that America's secret weapon wasn't atomic bombs or superior tanks, but the ability to give ice cream to enemies while fighting a global war. In the final accounting, the bottles of Coca-Cola and dishes of ice cream served in American prison camps achieve what armies alone could only attempt: the complete transformation of enemy hearts and minds. The German prisoners who couldn't believe such abundance existed became its greatest witnesses, carrying home the truth that democracy tasted like chocolate and freedom fizzed like carbonation. Their story reminds us that sometimes the greatest victories are won not through destruction but through demonstration, not through taking but through giving, not through hatred but through the simple act of serving ice cream to enemies on a hot summer day. The men who experienced American abundance as prisoners became freedom's most unlikely ambassadors, transformed forever by the impossible reality of Coca-Cola and ice cream in American prison camps. They witnessed that the arsenal of democracy contained not just weapons, but something more powerful: the ability to create abundance, so complete that sharing with enemies cost nothing. That lesson, learned in prison camps across America between 1943 and 1946, proved that in the contest between totalitarian scarcity and democratic abundance, ice cream and Coca-Cola were weapons more powerful than any bomb.